So what we're going to do in this video is go over computer directories and hopefully explain exactly how they work and how to move around in them. We're going to be using a Linux computer. I'm actually on a Mac, but same thing. But I'm going to be showing how to move around in the directories and how to understand when to put a slash, when not to put a slash, how to get to things that are in the current directory that you're in, and just hopefully explain the whole process so that when we're done, you'll be able to move around in the directory on any computer just like a pro. So to get started, what I've done is I've drawn out an example of a building. And so we're going to pretend that the hallway in this building is our root directory. And the root directory is always gotten to by a single slash. Now, whether you're in Windows or in Linux, the only difference is Windows is a backslash, where Linux is a forward slash. Other than that, they work pretty much the same way. You move around in the directories with a command called cd, which is change directory. That also works the same between Linux and Windows. So if you're at a command prompt in Windows or in Linux, you'll be able to move around pretty easily with the cd command. Now, if we're standing in the hallway and we want to go into the etc folder in this example, then our command, it could be cd etc, and there's a space here. So we could type cd etc, and that will put us in the etc room because we're already in the root in the hallway. So we could also get in there by typing cd space slash etc, and this command is basically like someone telling you that no matter where you are in the building, go back to the hall and start over and come back into the room from the hallway. So anytime you put a forward slash at the beginning of a cd command path, you're always telling it to go back to the very beginning, the very first hallway that you came to, and come into the room that we're in from that location. So if you put a forward slash at the beginning of the command, you're always going to find the directory you're looking at, and you'll see in a moment why that doesn't always work if you don't put a slash in the front. So now let's pretend that we're actually in the etc folder. So this is where we're located at the moment. And inside of the etc folder, we have other rooms that we can go into. These are directories, but we'll call them rooms for our example. So we could go into these rooms, and there's actually a lot more than that, and you'll see in a moment when we get into the actual into the actual computer. But you've got these rooms, and also within the etc room, you have a bunch of files. So files are things that we can edit. They're programs that we can run. They're basically things that we can work with inside of the room we're in, or we can go into another room and do things in there. So in each one of these rooms, there's a bunch of files, or could be a bunch of files, that we could get to. There's not always other rooms. So at some point you're going to get to the last room in that series of directories that we went through, and what's in there is in there, but you can't go any farther. You're right there. So let's pretend right now we're going to erase this down here, and we're going to pretend that we issued the following command. We're going to say cd space slash etc slash init.d. And we're not going to worry about what these rooms are for. We're really just trying to understand how to move around in the directory at this point. So inside of the etc init.d folder, we've gotten there by typing slash, go back to the root, go back to the hallway, go into the etc room, and then go into the init.d room. But so right now we're in the init.d room. Let's pretend for just a moment that we want to go, let me get a different color here. We'll use this color. So let's pretend that we're in this room right here. So this is where we're at, and we want to go into this mount room down here. So just as an example, if we typed cd space mount, you can see that we're actually in the init.d room. So we're in here, and we've just issued a command cd mount. Well, looking inside of the init.d folder, there's no rooms inside of the init.d folder called mount. So you're going to get an error back when you try to do that, because you can't go into mount from the root or from the init.d folder. The same thing is if you're in the etc folder and you want to go into the mount folder. Again, there's no mount folder, or there's no mount room inside that etc room, so you can't get there. You're going to be looking around the walls wondering where they're telling you to go, because you can't get there. So in order to actually get to the mount folder, we have to tell it to go back to the mount, back to the root folder, go back to the hallway, and then look for a room called mount. That's how you get into the mount folder. So you can see if you're anywhere in these other rooms over here, you've gone anywhere off of that hall and you're trying to get to a room that is on the hall, you have to go back to the hall to get there. You can't just magically appear over in the mount folder in this example. So the next example that I want to do here is, let's pretend that we actually issued this command. So we told it to go into etc, and now I want to go into the init.d folder. So I am in the etc folder, and I want to go into this folder up here. Well, there's two ways to get there. I could type cd space /etc /init.d, because in that example, it always works. I'm telling it to go back to the hall, go back into the etc folder, and then go into the init.d folder. So I've given it the full path, and the full path is always going to work as long as you're actually typing the right path. Now, the other thing that I could do, though, is I'm already in the etc folder, and init.d is in that folder, so I could more quickly just tell it to cd into init.d. Because I'm in the etc folder, if I look around the room, I'm going to actually see that there's an init.d room labeled init.d. I can just walk in there directly from etc. So in that example, I don't have to put the /. So the / is just, if you think about it, the / is telling you to always go back to the root folder and start completely over to get where you want to go. That is not always the easiest thing to do. If you're in a 5 directory level deep directory, and you want to go into a directory that's sitting right there, why type in the entire command up to the room that you're sitting there looking at? It just doesn't make any sense to always run back to root to be able to get there. Now, there's another concept, another two concepts that you need to understand about directories, and that is the concept, and let me erase this stuff. That is the concept of a parent directory and a current directory. So // is always the current directory. Now, why would I need a /? Well, in Linux, for security reasons, you can't run a program that is in the current directory unless you tell it to specifically run that program. So let's say that in the mount folder there is a mail program, just as an example, and I want to actually run that mail command. Well, I need to type in /. So I'm telling it, look in the current directory and run a program called mail, or whatever the program happens to be. So the current directory is denoted by a /. A parent directory is a //. So let's imagine that I'm in the init.d folder and I want to back up one directory. I want to go back to the etc folder, and then I want to go into the networking folder, or the network folder that I have labeled here. So there's a couple different ways that we could do that using the .. and the dot. So I could type cd /etc. That's one way that I could get back to the etc folder. So no matter where I am or how deep I am inside of these etc folders, I can jump back to etc by just typing cd /etc. The other thing I could do is I could type cd .. That tells me tells the computer to back me up one directory, which in this case is going to put me back in etc. So you can see that moving around in the computer hard drive is not magic. It's all very, very logical. It works exactly like this example, which would be a building with a bunch of rooms in it that are offset from each other. The concept of files and directories are pretty synonymous with folders and a file cabinet with the drawers. It's just ways to get to the programs and the things that you're trying to do. But moving around in the computer is very, very simple. You're either going to go back to the hall, go back to the very beginning, and move into the folder that you want to go into, or you're going to work directly from where you're at. And in the latter case, you would never put a / in front of that command. Now, I want to take just a second to show you some examples of this on the actual computer. So here, I'm going to tell it to go to the root directory. So here, if I issue the ls command, which is a list, if I'm on Windows, it's going to be a dir, but we're going to get a list of everything that's in that folder. Now, imagine I'm in a hall and I've got a bunch of rooms with labels on all the doors that tell me what is in that room. And in this case, I've got one that's labeled etc. So because I'm standing in the hall, I'm just going to type cd etc. And you can see now my current prompt is showing me that I'm in the etc folder. Now, if I want to back up to the root, I could type cd /, or I could type, if I'm in etc, I could type ... And both of those, you see, put me back in the other directory. So if we go into etc init.d and I do an ls, there's a bunch of files that are in this case, it's a bunch of programs that are in that folder. If I want to go back to etc, I could type cd / etc, or if I'm already in the init.d and I want to just cd back, you'll notice both of those put us back in the same spot on the hard drive. So you should be able to, using either the dir or the cd command, or dir to list or ls to list, you should be able to use the cd command to go into each folder on your computer, do an ls, see what's in that folder, and then cd back out of that folder, go into another folder, and be able to check out your entire computer and see everything that's on the hard drive using a few very simple concepts and commands.